We have a cowboy and an Indian. See some issues with that. This is called Chapter 9, Shooting Match. Omri put the cowboy and the horse in his sock drawer while he had the quickest supper on record. Then he raced upstairs again, stopping only to pinch a few grains of Gillen's rat feed for the two horses. Shut up in his room, he took stock. A room this size was like sort of an indoor national park to the cowboy and the Indian. It should be easy enough to keep them apart for one night. Omri thought first of putting the new pair straight back in the cupboard and then bringing them back to life the next morning in time for school, but he had promised Patrick not to. So he decided to empty out the dressing up crate and put the cowboy and his horse in there for the night. The crate was about 2 feet square, made of planks. There was certainly no visible way out of it for the cowboy. Omri put him carefully down into it. Looking down at him, he felt curious about his name, where he came from, and so on, but he decided it was better not to talk to him. The cowboy had clearly decided that Omri was not really there at all. So I think the cowboy's decided he's just imagining him, because he's a giant, right? So with his big hands, he reached down, carrying some cold stew, grain for the horse, some fragments of apple for them both, and later some cotton wool and scraps of material for bedding. The cowboy deliberately covered his eyes by pulling down his big hat brim. It was only when Omri reached in one final time to give him a drink of water in a minute green glass bottle that he had found in the bathroom cupboard that the cowboy spoke a word. "Take that filthy stuff out of here," he suddenly shouted in a strong Texas accent. "I ain't aiming to drink no more as long as I live." And he heaved the bottle, which was almost as big as himself, up by its base and tipped its contents out onto the boards at the bottom of the crate. "It's only water," Omri ventured to say. "You shut your mouth," said the great little man. "I won't take no lip from no goldarn hallucination, no sir. Maybe I do drink too much liquor, and maybe I can't hold it like some of them real tough guys do. But if I'm getting a delirium tremens and starting to see things, why can't I see pink elephants and dancing rats and all them purty things other fellers see when they gone too far? It ain't fair for me to see giants and blue deserts and get put in boxes the size of the Grand Canyon with no one but my little hoss for company." He sat on the pile of hay and took the horse's nose in his arms and put his face against it and began to sob. Omri was shattered. A cowboy crying? He didn't know what to do. When his mother cried, as she sometimes did when things got to be too much, she only asked to be left alone until she felt better, and maybe all grown-ups were like that. So Omri turned away and got slowly into his pajamas and then went to see how Little Bear was getting along on the far side of the crate. He'd finished the painting. The teepee looked really good. Little Bear was now in the longhouse arranging his blanket for the night. The pony was tethered to his post on a long rope. Omri took out the rat food and gave it to him, and then he called Little Bear out. "Are you okay? Anything you need?" He should have known better than to ask. "Plenty. Want fire in longhouse. Keep warm. Keep animals away. Want tomahawk." "So you can chop bits out of my leg?" Little Bear angry when say that. "Sorry now. Use tomahawk cut down trees, chop firewood, kill fish." "What fish?" Little Bear replied with a very good imitation of a fish swimming, and then he did a mime of catching it, putting on a block, and with the whirl of his arm, chopping its head off with gleeful relish. "I don't know about that." "You get tomorrow. Fish from plastic. Good tools, but fire now. Chief Little Bear say." Omri sighed, and he went to the waste paper basket and picked out the remains of the other fire that he'd thrown away from there. There was quite a lot of fire lighter left, and he gathered up some bits of the willow bark and twigs from where Little Bear had been working. "You're not having it inside, though. It's far too dangerous." He arranged the fire on the packed earth of the seed tray about 6 inches from the entrance to the longhouse, first moving the teepee to safety. Then he struck a match, and soon there was a cozy blaze. Little Bear crouched beside it, his red skin glowing and his eyes bright with pleasure. "Little Bear, can you dance?" "Yes, many kinds." "Would you do one now so I could see?" He hesitated and then shook his head once. "Why not, though?" "No reason dance." "Maybe if I got you a wife?" The Indian looked up eagerly. "You get? Give word?" "I only said I'd try." "Then, Little Bear, dance." "Then do best dance." "Love dance." Omri turned off his light and drew back from the scene. It looked amazingly real, with the fire making shadows and the little horse munching his grain and the Indian sitting on his heels warming himself, wearing his colorful headdress and chief's cloak. Omri wished he himself were small enough to join Little Bear by the fire. Omri, are you in bed? I'm coming up in 5 minutes to kiss you goodnight. Omri felt panicky, but it was all right. The fire was going out. Already Little Bear was standing up, yawning and stretching, and he peered up through the darkness. Hey, Omri, paintings good? They're great. You sleep now? Yes. Peace of great spirits be with you. Thank you. Same to you. Omri peered quickly into the crate, and the poor cowboy had crawled away into his makeshift bed and was snoring loudly. He hadn't eaten a thing. Omri sighed. He hoped Patrick was making plans and arrangements. After all, if Omri could keep his Indian a secret, Patrick might be able to do the same. So the cowboy thinks that maybe he drank too much liquor. You know, some people act really dumb when they drink liquor or they imagine things. And so he thinks that that's what he's done, which we know that's not what he's done. And then he starts to cry, which is really not common for a cowboy probably to cry too much. All might yet be well, but Omri certainly wasn't going to try the experiment again. It was all too much worry. He climbed into bed, feeling unusually tired, and his mother came in and kissed him, and the door was shut. And he felt himself drifting off almost right away when suddenly a piercing whinny sounded and was answered by another. The horses had smelled each other. Oh boy, they were not so far apart, and the cowboy was not tied up. And Omri could hear his little hoofs clattering on the bare boards of the crate, and then the whinnies began again, high, shrill, almost questioning. Omri thought of putting on his light, but he was awfully tired, and besides, what could he do? They couldn't possibly reach each other through the planks of the crate wall. Let them whinny their heads off, they'd soon get fed up. So Omri rolled over and fell asleep. He was wakened just after dawn by shots. He was out of bed in 1/5 of a second. One glance at the crate showed him all too clearly that the cowboy and his horse had escaped. The second glance showed how. A knot in the wood had been pushed out or perhaps kicked out by the horse, leaving an oval-shaped hole like an arched doorway, just big enough to let horse and rider through. Omri looked around wildly. At first he could see nothing, and he dropped to his knees beside the seed box and peered into the longhouse. Little Bear was not there, nor was his horse. And suddenly some tiny thing whizzed past Omri's ear and struck the crate beside him with a ping. And twisting his head, Omri saw it, a feathered arrow, the size of a pin, still quivering from its flight. So if you look at this picture, can you see it very well? Maybe real flat. You see the cowboy right over here and the horse. You see Omri trying to figure out what's going on. There's arrows flying. Might be some gunshots going on. It doesn't sound good. Was Little Bear shooting at him? Little Bear, where are you? No answer, but suddenly a movement like that of a mouse caught the corner of his eye. It was the cowboy, dragging his horse behind him. He was running, half bent over from behind one chair leg to another. He had his revolver in his hand, his hat on his head. Another arrow flew, missing the crate this time and burying itself in the carpet, just ahead of the running cowboy, who stopped dead, jumped backwards till his horse hit him, and then fired another 2 shots from behind the horse's shoulder. Omri followed his aim and spotted Little Bear at once. He and his horse were behind a small heap of cloth, which was like a snow-covered hill to them, but was actually Omri's vest, dropped carelessly on the floor the night before. Little Bear, safe in the shelter of this cotton mountain, was just preparing to shoot another arrow at the cowboy, one that could hardly fail to hit its mark. The poor fellow was now scrabbling desperately onto his horse to try to ride away, and he was in full sight of the Indian as he drew back his bowstring. Little Bear, stop! Omri's frenzied voice rang out. Little Bear did not stop, but his surprise spoiled his aim, and the arrow sped over the cowboy, doing no worse than sweeping off his big hat and pinning it to the baseboard behind the chair. This infuriated that little man who, forgetting his fear, stood up in his stirrups and said, "Tarnation take you, you red varmint! Wait till I catch you. I'll have your stinking red hide for a sleeping bag." And with that he rode straight toward the Vest Hill at full gallop, shouting out strange cowboy war cries and waving his gun, which by Omri's count still had 2 bullets in it. Little Bear had not expected this, but he was only outfaced for a moment. Then he coolly drew another arrow from his quiver and fit it in his bow. "Little Bear, if you shoot, I'm going to pick you up and squeeze you," Omri said. Little Bear kept his arrow pointing towards the oncoming horseman. "What you do if he shoot?" he asked. "He won't shoot. Look at him." Sure enough, the carpet was too soft for much galloping, and even as Omri spoke, the cowboy's horse stumbled and fell, pitching its rider over its head. Little Bear lowered his bow and laughed, and then, to Amri's horror, he laid down the bow among the folds of the vest, reached for his knife, and began to advance on the prostrate cowboy. What do you think he wants to do with his knife to the cowboy on the ground? Little Bear, you are not to touch him, do you hear? Little Bear stopped. He tried to shoot Little Bear. White enemy. Try take Indian's land. Why not kill? Better dead. I act quick. He not feel, you see. And he began to move forward again. When he was nearly up to the cowboy, Amri swooped in on him. He didn't squeeze him, of course, but he did lift him high and fast enough to give him a fright. Listen to me now. That cowboy is not after your land. He's got nothing to do with you. He's Patrick's cowboy, like you're my Indian, and I'm taking him to school with me today, so you won't be bothered by him anymore. Now you take your horse and get back to your longhouse and leave him to me. Little Bear, sitting cross-legged on the palm of his hand, gave him a sly look. You take him to school? Place where you learn about ancestors? That's what I said. He folded his arms, offended. Why you not take Little Bear? Amri was startled into silence. If white fool with coward's face good enough, Indian chief good enough. So he just called the cowboy a white fool with a coward's face. You wouldn't enjoy it. If he enjoy, I enjoy. I'm not taking you. It's too risky. Risky? Firewater? No, not whiskey. Risky. Dangerous. He shouldn't have said that because Little Bear's eyes lit up. I like danger. Here too quiet. No hunting. Him only enemy, he said scornfully, peering over the edge of Amri's hand at the cowboy, who, despite the softness of his landing place, was only just scrabbling to his feet. Look, he no use for fight. Little Bear soon kill, take scalp, finish. Very good scalp, he added generously. Fine color, look good on belt. So the cowboy has reddish hair, and so Little Bear's saying, it's a really nice looking scalp. It'll look good on my belt. Amri looked across at the cowboy. He was leaning his ginger head against his saddle, and it looked like he might be crying again. Amri felt very sorry for him. You're not going to hurt him, he said to the Indian, because I won't let you. If he's such a coward, it wouldn't do your honor any good anyway. Little Bear's face fell and then grew mulish. No tell from scalp on belt if belong to coward or brave man, he said slyly. Let me kill and I do dance around campfire. No, Amri began, but then he changed his tactics. All right, you can kill him, but then I won't bring you a wife. The Indian looked at him for a long time, and then he slowly put his knife away. No touch, give word. Now you give word. Take Little Bear to school. Take to plastic. Let Little Bear choose own woman. So he wants to go to the store where they have the plastic toys, and he wants to pick out his own wife. Amri considered. He could keep Little Bear in his pocket all day, no need to take chances, and if they were tempted to show the other children, well, he must resist temptation, that was all. And then after school, he could take them to Yap's store, and the boxes with the plastic figures in them were in the corner behind the high stand, and provided there weren't too many other kids in the shops, he might be able to give Little Bear a quick look at the Lady Indians before he bought one, which would be a very good thing. Otherwise, he might pick an old or ugly one without realizing it. It was so hard to see from their tiny plastic faces what they would look like when they came to life. Okay then, I'll take you, but you must do as I tell you and not make any noise. He put him down on the seed tray and gently shooed the horse up the ramp. Little Bear tied it to his post, and Amri gave him some more rat food. Then he crawled on hands and knees over to where the cowboy was now sitting dolefully on the carpet. His horse reins looped around his arm, looking too miserable to move. What's the matter? Amri asked him. The little man didn't look up. I lost my hat, he mumbled. Oh, is that all? Amri reached over to the baseboard and pulled the pin-like arrow out of the wide brim of the hat. Here it is, he said kindly, laying it on the cowboy's lap. The cowboy looked at it, and then looked up at Amri, and then stood up and put the hat on. You sure ain't no regular hallucination, he said. I'm obliged to you. Suddenly he laughed. Just imagine thinking a piece of your delirium tremens for giving your hat back. I just can't figure out what's going on around here. Say, are you real? Or was that engine real? 'Cause in case you ain't noticed, you're a dang sight bigger than he is. You can't both be real. Well, I don't think you ought to worry about it. What is your name? The cowboy seemed embarrassed and hung his head. My name's Boone, but the fellas, they all call me Boo-Hoo. That's on account I cry so easily. It's my soft heart. show me something sad or scare me just a little, and the tears just come to my eyes. I can't help it. Omri, who'd been somewhat of a crybaby himself until very recently, was not inclined to be scornful about this, and he said, "That's okay, only you needn't be scared of me. And as for the Indian, he's my friend and he won't hurt you. He's promised. Now, I'd like you and your horse to go back into that big crate, and I'll stick the knot back in the wood and you'll feel safer. And then I'll go get some breakfast." Boone brightened visibly at this. "What would you like?" "Oh, shucks. I ain't that hungry. Just a couple bits of steak and 3 or 4 eggs sitting on a small heap of beans and washed down with a jug of coffee will suit me just dandy." Psh, you'd be lucky, thought Omri. So not only is the Indian very bossy and kind of needy, this cowboy, Boone, he's pretty hungry. He wants to eat a lot. He might be a little bossy, too.